Thanks, everybody. Hi, I'm Nauder Faraday. It's a pleasure to be here. I want to welcome all of you to Hopkins. Probably been here for you guys have been here for at least a short time, hopefully getting acclimated. We're going to talk about promotions. It's not the first thing on everyone's mind. I mean, it shouldn't be. You have a lot of other things on your mind. But I think it's good just to give the landscape and an idea of what the process is like. And I always like to preface this talk by acknowledging that it is your work, it's your accomplishments that make Johns Hopkins great. The institution has asked you to be here because the institution believes that the work that you do at Johns Hopkins is going to have substantive impact here locally, at the regional level, at the national level, and internationally. And so, congratulations for being here, and this is a talk to help you navigate your career progression as you move through Hopkins. And one of the things that's important to understand about Hopkins and the promotions process is that our values and our mission are aligned in our promotions process with what the institution wants to happen. And you can see here bolded in red is what Johns Hopkins is about. For those of you who have been here for a little while, I probably already understand this. Those of you who may be new, are that we want to set the standard of excellence in 3 phases of biomedical work: education, research, and clinical care. And we're here to foster intellectual discovery, create and transmit innovative knowledge, and improve human health and provide leadership to the world. And you'll see in these statements the idea that it's very outward facing. It's not just what happens here at Hopkins, which clearly is important, but more perhaps important is what is that impact outside of Johns Hopkins. And so remember that. It's really about what the impact is outside of Johns Hopkins, is that the institution is trying to work towards, and what you actually will get promoted for. There are official faculty books that provide information to you. It's a nice read if you feel like you want to fall asleep at night. So we have the gold book, which is for the full-time faculty, the blue book, which is for the part-time faculty, and the silver book, which is the professional development guide for all faculty. The silver book was recently updated just this year. It's the 2025 edition. You can find all of these books online through the Office of Faculty, and they really, if you have any questions about appointments, promotions, how the processes work, issues about being a faculty member, I would refer you to these. Just take a look. They're not very long books, but if you can just find some keywords that you want if you need. And the silver book now is completely online, and you can actually navigate it quite easily if you're looking for particular aspects about professional development. So at Hopkins, we have a number of promotional tracks, 2 to be exact at the moment. And these promotions track, the traditional scholarship track, we call it, and the clinical excellence track are both tenure tracks. One of the unusual things about Johns Hopkins as a medical institution is that almost all of the faculty, almost all, not 100%, but almost all of the faculty are in the tenure track. Doesn't matter if you're a researcher or a clinician, or an educator, you're all really in the tenure track and can make it to a tenure position. So that's one of the things to keep in mind. We have these 2 tracks, the scholarship track, which has 4 pathways on it: a teaching, a research, a clinical pathway, as well as a program building pathway. And then the clinical excellence track is really for those folks who are primarily engaged in clinical work. And that track came about 5 years ago to expand opportunities for the faculty to move towards tenure. And we are now in the process, with the help of Dr. Levine and Dr. Cofrancesco, who I think you'll meet shortly if you haven't already met, you just met. They are leading the effort to develop a 3rd track, which is called an educator track. That hopefully will be available in the next academic year. Now, those tracks exist, but you don't declare your track until you're moving to the associate professor level. So those of you in the room who are an instructor or an assistant professor, you do not have a designated track at the moment. Hopefully you have an idea, if not at this moment, but soon, which track you will be on. And part of the reason for having this talk is that you want to know what track you're on, because the criteria for promotion are somewhat different in the two tracks. And so you want to get an early start to know, well, how am I being evaluated? What are the criteria by which I should be accumulating accomplishments so that I am prepared to be promoted when the time comes. For the criteria to be an assistant professor essentially are that you have finished your training and that you have evidence of creative scholarship or clinical excellence, and there are some criteria here. You have to have some degree of dissemination of your work. I won't go through these in detail. When you are ready to move to the level of associate professor, again, whichever track you choose, you have to declare, well, which track should your candidacy be considered in? And we're going to focus on the two tracks that we currently have now, which are the scholarship and clinical excellence track. And our promotions process here at Hopkins are very similar to other institutions at this level, right? You know, Johns Hopkins has a certain peer group. When you're at this peer group level, there are really two main pillars for promotion. All institutions are looking for some level of recognition outside of the home institution. All of them do. And the second is, well, what is the basis for this outside recognition that the world sees you at? So in our scholarship track, the level of recognition that's required for associate professor is that you're a national contributor. And the level of recognition that's required for professor is that you're a national leader and or internationally recognized. And the basis for your promotion in the scholarship track is your scholarship, which is defined as the creation and or dissemination of knowledge that's accessible for critical review and use by the community. And primarily the basis for that is your written publications. We'll get to that in just a moment. And as I mentioned, there are 4 pathways on that, but all of them converge on it's your written scholarship that you've disseminated that is the basis for your recognition. In the clinical excellence track, for the associate professor level, the level of recognition is regional, and for professor, it is national. And here the criteria or basis for your recognition are different. Here it is your clinical excellence that is the basis for your recognition. And in large part, or certainly a substantive part of that, is based upon evaluations, we call it 360 evaluation, that is going to come from 4 groups of individuals: peers and leaders, staff members, learners, and patients. And we'll speak a little bit more detail about this in just a moment. So in both tracks, and this will be true in the educator track as well, it's going to be about your impact beyond the walls of Johns Hopkins. The work that you do here is very, very important. It's critical to be a good citizen here, to be engaged, to be doing things that are in part locally effective, but your outward work is going to be the basis for your promotion. And so what is impact? How is it actually examined? It's really how many lives has your work affected? What is the magnitude of that effect on the lives that you've had? And how widely dispersed is the geographical effect of your work? That's essentially the conceptual framework for your impact. And when you move from associate professor to a professor, it really is more of the same accomplishments at a higher level. So what are the kinds of things that would actually demonstrate scholarship in the scholarship track? As I mentioned, the most important criterion, the metric that's used, is your peer-reviewed original research scholarship, and primarily your first or last author publications, because those are the publications for which you get the most credit in the biomedical field. Your grants and awards are certainly important. They're not a requirement, but certainly very important. Other types of written work, review articles, book chapters, they do count, but generally less so. Published guidelines can be influential. Case reports, again, can count, but usually less so. For those of you who are entrepreneurial kind of inventions and patents into intellectual work, if that intellectual work is associated with demonstrated outside impact, for example, that intellectual property has led to licensing of something or a startup company or something even more important that's produced and used by the public, all of that would be helpful. There are non-traditional types of publications or dissemination, certainly videos, podcasts. It is possible if they can be documented that they are very influential. And then there are educational criteria as well in terms of disseminating educational programs and curricula and published course materials. For researchers who are on the scholarship track, and most people are going to be doing some research, all researchers have to have some demonstration that their work is independent. It is particularly important for those who do not have clinical obligations. That independence usually means you have independent funding for your work, and that your work is not in the same area that your previous mentors were. And so other types of things, again, your extramural grants, your invited speaking engagements, and other types of activities that you do independently, like grant review panels, can be helpful to demonstrate your independence. Now, in the clinical excellence track, there are different metrics that are used to assess your impact of your work and your recognition for that. To be eligible for this track, again, as I mentioned, you need to be primarily engaged with clinical work, either directly or indirectly. The most important piece is this 360 evaluation sent out to those 4 groups of individuals. To be promoted to the level of associate professor, you need to be rated by these individuals to be in the top 25% of people who would be in your field. And to be promoted to professor, you would need to be rated by them to be in the top 10%. And so here are the types of things that there's a survey that's sent out to individuals whom you'll name, and they will be asked questions such as, please rate Dr. X with regard to his peers on this scale, with regard to their fund of knowledge, their clinical acumen, their enthusiasm for teaching, for their professionalism, things that clinicians would say are very communication skills, things that clinicians would say, yeah, every clinician really needs to be good at these things if you're going to be promoted or thought to be highly as a clinician. In addition to your clinical work, you do have to be engaged in the educational mission. There are many ways to be engaged in the educational mission. For example, when you're teaching other learners, medical students, residents, fellows on the wards, all that would count. You have to be engaged in the discovery mission. Here, you don't have to be the PI on a grant. You don't have to be writing grants, but you need to be engaged somehow. It could be you provide samples for research, maybe you help recruit patients, maybe you're doing quality improvement work at the institution. All of that would count. You do have to disseminate your ideas. Again, it's your outside impact that matters. Many ways to do that. We're going to just show how you do that in just a moment. And you do have to be engaged, again, with the institutional missions. All faculty members in all tracks at Hopkins have to be good citizens of the institution. You need to be collegial and professional, so that does matter. So what matters in terms of your outside recognition? What types of things in any track would show that the outside world recognizes you? Well, awards, grants from outside entities would certainly count. Doesn't just have to be an NIH grant. It could be some type of other award, a societal award or such. any type of honors or awards that you get from outside groups would certainly be influential. One of the things that's very important for faculty to be engaged in is speaking engagements. Again, regardless of what your expertise is, when you're thought of as an expert, people invite you to speak and teach others about your expertise. So those are very important. Again, you want to be able to speak outside the institution, even at a higher level when you're organizing conferences. That's an even higher level of recognition. Advisory boards, review groups of any type. Again, if you're a researcher, being on NIH or foundation grants or national grant awards, but there are other types of policy societies or that matter. Your professional societies matter. Again, engaging with your particular professional society, whether it be clinical or research or educational, you want to be known outside, and if you are recognized, you get invited to work at higher levels. Being on editorial boards, again, for people who write things, particularly in the research area, they then, once you've published something, they invite you to review articles for a journal. Then you do enough of those good reviews, they ask you to be on the editorial board. All of that's very important. Again, there are a number of other things as well. Just quickly, I don't want you to pay too deep attention to the exact numbers, but this type of information is available. Just how much is required and how long does it take? On average, to move from assistant professor to associate professor is about 7 years, and you can see some numbers of the kinds of activities, 35 or so total publications at the associate professor level. You can see how many first and last author people are speaking outside. They're on editorial boards. They are on society roles. Again, you don't have to do every single thing. It's not a checkbox, but the sum of all of your activities is what's going to count at a promotions committee. And just to give you a sense for professor, not to be too daunting about this, but you see professors here publish a lot in the scholarship track. They're having major impact. And it also takes another about 7 years on average to move from associate professor to professor. Again, this is a journey. It's a long journey. It can be a lot of fun. It's a lot of work, like anything. You need to earn it. You're just beginning in your process at whatever level you may be at. You're in the midst of your journey. So, what is the logistics of this process? You've done your work. You're a diligent faculty member. You're contributing in all the ways that your department wants you to do. You understand that you need to disseminate your work. You've been doing that. How do you know that you're ready to be promoted? And another unusual thing about Johns Hopkins compared, certainly in the School of Medicine in particular at Johns Hopkins, is that there is no specific timeline for promotion, meaning that there is not a specific date, like from your start to this point, at which you must get promoted. There is no up or out, like most institutions have. So that gives you the flexibility to work at your own pace. You can get there. If you're ready to do it in 4 years, you can do it in 4 years. If it takes you 8 years, it takes you 8 years. If it takes you 12 years, it takes you 12 years. So long as you're in good stead and doing what the institution wants, you can remain. The downside of that, I would say, and the experience of the faculty is now there's a lot of uncertainty. Well, how do I know I should go, right? What clues will I have, since no one's going to make you go up for promotion at any moment in time? And that puts somewhat of a burden on you to be an advocate for yourself and understand how the process works. And the way the process works is that your department director must nominate you for promotion. And each department has their own internal process by which the advice or goes to the chair of the department to say, yes, Dr. X has been great. She's done a wonderful job. We think she should be promoted. So the chair is going to depend upon those internal processes in which to know if that person is ready. And so you'll need to be familiar with whatever is your own internal departmental process. All the departments have been given information that it requires that this process works best as a best practice, that when many individuals are involved in the department, not just the chair making a singular decision. So they have that process in place, but you'll need to know what your department does, how they organize this group of advisors for the chair. And understanding that where these individuals, this process works for you, where you're going to interface with, is really two ways. One is all of the faculty members at Hopkins are required to have an annual review. And that annual review is really your time. It's your time to get information about, hey, how am I doing? This is what I did. Tell me if I'm on track. I was hoping to get promoted here. Am I on track? Do you need any resources? Talk with your division director, your department director during your annual review to not just get a sense of what you did, but where are you going and how long is it going to take? It's your right to know that, and you should take advantage of that annual review. It's not just a pro forma, or should not be just a pro forma event. In addition to that, as I mentioned, each department has their own structure, departmental promotion structure. You'll need to understand how that process works, who's on those, not so much who are the individuals from a contact point of view that you need to know, so that if you need to get before them, how you bring your material to them. So because of this kind of unique process we have here at Hopkins, you're going to have to be engaged in your process to know how you're doing. And to get the feedback you need so that your promotion happens in a timely way. Once the department director has made the call that it is time for you to be nominated for promotion, there is an application process that we have online to submit your materials. What are the materials that you actually need? You will need a letter from the department director called the department's director's nomination letter. You'll need to have your CV formatted in the Hopkins format. So if you haven't already started your CV, that's actually a good thing to do. You can find the template from the Silver Book. If you already came from another institution, you probably want to start filling out the Hopkins format. You probably already have it in Hopkins format, most of you. And anytime you have an activity, an accomplishment, just put it on your CV. Don't wait. You're going to forget. You gave a talk, put it on your CV. Because you're going to forget, when did I give that talk? What was that? Don't wait. Just put it on. You have a publication, put it on your CV. Okay, that's the best way to do it in real time, so that when the time comes, your CV is just ready and raring to go. You will have an application through this online system called Interfolio. You'll have to compile a referee list and potentially some supplemental material. And at the present time, we have 3 promotions committee. We have the Professorial Promotions Committee, which handles the scholarship track candidates for professor. We have the Associate Professor Promotions Committee, which also handles scholarship track candidates here for the associate professor level, and we have the Clinical Excellence Promotion Committee, which handles both associate professors and professors in the clinical excellence track. I don't want to get too deep into the weeds about what you need to do to get your materials together, but suffice it to say that there will be a number of external referees that you will have to list. There will be potentially other referees that will be solicited by the promotions committee that are not on your list. That's for at the professor level. At the associate professor level, you get to name all of the referees that you think are appropriate for you. And the similar processes are for the scholarship as well as in the clinical excellence track. And just for a general framework, once your material gets to the School of Medicine, your application is complete. It takes about 6 to 12 months to be promoted, to get an answer from the Associate Professor Promotions Committee in the institution. And for professor, it's more like 1 to 2 years. Okay. So that's the nuts and bolts, but I want to make a few comments, and you've already had some comments on this, is this process is a journey, and you're not alone on this journey. You need folks like this dude or others that maybe look a little different, but that you identify who can help bring you to where you want to go, okay? And so those people, we call them mentors, we call them sponsors, we call them advisors or counselors. We call them coaches. These are different types of advising relationships. It's not critical here that you know the distinction per se of all of those things, but there are somewhat different functions that they serve. All of them are designed to advocate for you in some way, to help you to get you where you want to go. And it's really important, I think, in the early part of a faculty member's career, right now for you, to identify these people. Who are these people? And it won't stay static. It won't be just the people you identified this week or next month or next year or even 5 years from now. It's going to change. But you need to be proactive in getting these individuals together who are going to be your team to get you through this process, as I said, this journey, which is a marathon. It's not a sprint. It's a marathon. And you wouldn't want to try, I don't know if any of you in this room are runners. It's not my sport, but if you are, no matter what sport you do, you don't go out there and say, I'm going to do this at the highest level tomorrow. You would train, you would do something, you would get your body in shape. And you would want to have, if you want to do it at a high level, the people, the coaches in your corner who are going to help you and guide you, those personal trainers who are going to prepare you for that marathon. So that's what you want to do. That's what this mentorship is about. And you want to be smart about how you're going about your activities. So you want to set goals for yourself that are manageable, set what we call SMART goals. They're specific, they're measurable, they're achievable, they're relevant, and they're time limited. It's like, you want to win the Super Bowl. Every team wants to win the Super Bowl, but they don't start out by saying, we're just going to win the Super Bowl. You say, I just want to get 1% better tomorrow. I want to work on this particular aspect. That's how you get there. And so maybe you'll say, God, I want to get out this one paper this year. That's my goal. I want to write that grant this year. I want to build this part of my clinical practice in the next 6 months. So you set those goals so that you can get there. You need to know what promotion track you're on, and you have to have a particular area of expertise. You've all done a lot of training. You all have a lot of expertise. It's easier to be known for something narrow than something broad. And even many of you, again, I'm a clinician, as many of you are in this room, but as an anesthesiologist, critical care doc, well, there's a lot of anesthesiologists, critical care docs out there. But you have to have a focus on what specifically in this area are you known for outside of the institution. People inside the institution may know me for this clinical practice, but people outside aren't. And so even when you're out there in the clinical excellence track, if that's what you choose to do, what area of your clinical specialty are they going to know you for? That's unlikely they'll know you for just that you're a generally good doctor. It's you're good in a particular area, and that's what patients come to see you for and why people refer them to you. So again, we want to have this team of individuals who are helping you. You need to disseminate your work. And you really, I want to emphasize this last point, is as best as you can, go where your passion is leading you. Because this is a journey and it takes time, as much as you can align your passion with what you're doing every day, and you align what you're doing every day with the metrics that you're being assessed by, the better off you're going to be. The better off you're going to be. You don't want to be engaging in work that, God, I really don't like writing papers. Well, if you don't like writing papers, maybe you don't want to be on the scholarship track. Or say, if you don't like taking care of patients, then gosh, maybe the clinical excellence track isn't the right track for you. So think about that in advance and work with your leaders in your department to make sure that your work is aligned with your passion. And I'll just wrap up with saying, the institution is committed to your success, and we understand that your success is going to be the reflection of the success on the institution. So it's very much aligned, and the Office of Faculty is also really here to help you, so feel free to reach out and engage with any of us in the Office of Faculty to help you. And I'll pause there and take any questions.
So we have time for questions here. We are going to maybe shift in about 8 minutes over to the lunch venue, which is when we go out of here, we're going to make a left, and you're going to walk to the Miller Building, and just behind you, as you walk past the wall, you'll see the G01 room. So what questions do you have? We have a few minutes. Any questions?
Hi, thanks for all this information. I have a question about the different categories of activities for promotion. So I was wondering, does the activity have to be an active activity that you're doing, or could it be something that you did like a year ago that you can, put in that category towards?
All of the work that you've done prior to coming to Hopkins counts. So it certainly would go on your CV. You're not judged only by what happens here. Of course, again, I'm not sure, it depends upon where you are. I mean, generally speaking, and it's your postgraduate work or your graduate work onward that matters, not the things that happened before. But if you, for example, there are plenty of people perhaps in this audience, or people came from another institution, they may already be an associate professor, and stuff that you did at some other institution certainly counts, and you'd want to include it on your CV.
Have you guys ever declined proposals for promotion? And if so, what are the common reasons?
Oh, so that's a great question. So, so when an application comes to the School of Medicine, at that point, the vast majority of people get promoted, about more than 90%. So that doesn't mean 100%. So there are people who get turned down at the School of Medicine level, 5 to 10%, let's say. I think the other issue is, well, what happens inside of your department? Not everyone is actually forwarded or nominated for promotion. So that's a different process. And so, yeah, everyone doesn't get promoted to associate professor ultimately, and everyone doesn't get promoted to professor. But what's important to know is it's not like there's some limit. It's not like writing an NIH grant where the pay line is at 4%. Everyone could get promoted. What you need to do is meet the criteria that are set out.
So are there common reasons?
Oh, the common reasons are, the most common reasons that people didn't meet the criteria. I mean, that's really it. Like, you just didn't have enough in the scholarship track, that people hadn't disseminated sufficient scholarship or didn't have recognition at the appropriate level. And in the clinical excellence track, it's people weren't recognized by their peers and leaders or patients as excellent clinicians at the 25th percentile or 10th percentile. Or their letters of recommendation, again, neither track didn't support that they were recognized outside the institution. That's really the only reasons that people, not the only, but 99% of the time.
In those situations, there's pretty specific feedback that's provided, so that if you're that individual, you know what you need to do to meet those criteria. So it would be very specific suggestions for you. Yeah.
And that's why it's so important. You don't want to, I mean, it is true that if you go to the School of Medicine committee, you will get that feedback, like, oh, you need to write 3 more papers or something like that. But rather than wait for that, it's better to each year to be having this ongoing discussion with your division director, your department, like, hey, listen, how am I doing? What do I need?
So the national recognition piece is really important for professor on the clinical excellence and associate on the scholarship track. And that's one thing that right now you can start thinking about, right? So what are my opportunities to develop national recognition? What's my network? Who can help me make those connections? Am I going to meetings? Am I talking to folks there? Am I getting invitations? Am I collaborating? Am I joining national society committees or task force? Those are the things that help you make those connections. That I would encourage you to think about now and not worry so much about what happens if you don't get promoted. Because as Nauder said, the vast majority of folks
You'll be fine.
Yeah.
Question here?
Yeah.
With regards to the clinical excellence track, I noticed that
Can you speak up?
much stronger in the clinical excellence track on leadership rather than papers. And I'm wondering, at the
So I think you have two things. One is the Office of Faculty offers leadership development courses, and so that's something you would look into to help develop the skills. I think the other piece that which is separate but important is the leadership, separate from the skill development, is what accomplishments do you have? And so within your division, your department, there would be leadership opportunities of some kind. You should explore those with your, say, for example, say, hey, listen, I know I want to be in the clinical excellence track. I know I'm going to need leadership. Here's my area of expertise. This is what I want to do. How can I develop this? And people oftentimes, what they'll do is they'll start with some local leadership role. That isn't sufficient to get promoted, but it allows them to develop some expertise and a program, some activity that now becomes something they can disseminate outside the institution. And then they start joining, they get known for this thing locally, and then they network and they're involved in their professional societies, they're speaking at meetings, and then they become part of these bigger outside organizations that are clinically focused.
We're going to take one more question, and then we're going to invite you guys to move to lunch. Yeah, go ahead, Andrew.
I have two-part question. One is there a maximum timeline to apply, or is there, or if it takes too long, is there a downside to that? Is it seen negatively? And the second thing is, coming from an outside institution, you might not develop patient relationship for them to give you the feedback. So what is the counter? Like, how can you balance that out?
The answer to the first question is there is no limit, and your trajectory takes 25 years, then it takes 25 years. There is no, you need to meet the bar of the recognition and the accomplishments, however long it takes. So we've had people who were here for 20 years and got promoted to the next level, and that's okay. And then regarding if you're clinically focused and you came from another institution, your reputation at that other place still counts. And you can even use individuals for the 360 from that other place. That's okay too. It doesn't have to be only here at Hopkins. You just need to be recognized at the appropriate level, which would be regional or national.
Great. Thank you so much. Thanks.